Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Life, Liberty, and Truth. Christian and Jared here.
Hey, what's up, everyone?
So today's topic, we're going to be talking about the entertainment industry and the negative effects and the decline that it's had over time and over the years. And so,
Especially in recent years.
yeah, and just kind of how it contributes to society and the role it plays. And so when we talk about entertainment, one of the things we're going to be talking about is movies in Hollywood, TV shows, music, and video games is what we're going to really focus on to hit on here.
Yep.
So with that said, Jared, how do you feel about them movies?
Well, obviously, we all like movies, right? If you don't, then you're crazy. But, there are some really great movies out there. And I'm not saying that all movies are bad or anything like that. But there's definitely speculation that you can say that movies have definitely dropped off in just like a negative way. Like there isn't, not saying that always has to have a happy ending like Disney has to have, but there's no, I don't know. I know there's certain movies where you're just like, it just has to have a bad ending or a negative ending, like there's a villain or whatever, but I'm kind of talking more of a perspective of like a younger individual, like watching movies, or who is watching movies, because when you watch these forms of entertainment, such as movies, you take from what you see, right, and you generally remember it for a very long time, especially if it's a very memorable scene or just a memorable movie that's really good. And so recently you've just had these movies where they've incorporated certain things that just there's no place for it, right? These certain themes, right, in the movie. And of course you're always going to have, there's always been movies that have had, drugs and alcohol and sex and all these kinds of things, but as it's just gotten to a point where it's almost, I don't want to say it's every movie, but it's definitely more consistent.
And it's starting to infiltrate into children's movies.
Yeah, it's starting to kind of make its way. And I'm not saying it's literally right there for children to see, but it is. I mean, you can see it a little bit in just even PG-13 movies.
Like even the Marvel movies.
Yeah, even Marvel movies, you have a lot of just suggestive stuff, I guess. For younger kids, obviously, if you're an adult, you're not going to be affected as much. But, again, you have to be careful with what you have the youth watch, because eventually they're just going to grow up and they're going to remember these things. I mean, I'm pretty sure you remember scenes from a lot of movies that you saw as a kid, whether good or bad, but you still remember them.
Or when you go back and you rewatch these movies and you watch and you're like, oh, I didn't catch that. Oh, I didn't catch that. Oh, dang, this kind of
right.
Bad.
And it's one thing when you throw certain things in there for adults because
innuendos are different.
Yeah, that's different. But the main thing that you have to be careful with is pedophilia is a big one that is starting to be incorporated, but also witchcraft and those kinds of things. And now you've seen a growing rate in, obviously, pedophilia has gotten a lot more exposure to the world now. A lot more people know about it and have that kind of knowledge, but also witchcraft or messing with Ouija boards or just those kinds of things, like trying to contact the spirit realm, because and I'll be honest, it is like super, super interesting. Like, it does draw you. You do want to experience and kind of like you don't want to do those things, but you're definitely interested. And it's one thing being interested, but it's definitely not a place for these movies coming out where they're encouraging witchcraft, or not necessarily devil worship, but kind of messing with spirits and things like that. And I see a big problem, especially when you have kids, because when you're a kid and you see something super interesting, like, you want to do it. And then when shows, or we're kind of talking about new movies now, but when movies incorporate those things and they encourage it, it can bring a negative effect to that kid.
Well, every movie has an agenda or a message that they try and portray. That's part of a story. That's part of, what a movie is. A movie is a story. A movie is like an art form. And so, yeah, that's true. When these movies are happening, every movie is trying to tell us something. And especially in children's movies, like I said a few minutes ago, is that how many times have you looked back at your children movies and these iconic movies, and you look back and you're like, ooh, that was kind of a dirty joke, or I didn't notice that happened, or I didn't notice that they did this. And so one of the things that I think we should hit on, and that's kind of important, is that movies are a form of grooming for children, and that not in the way of like grooming a dog, but it's grooming.
All right, Christian.
It's grooming as in the fact of it sets you up, it builds you up, gives you a mindset, it prepares you for things, it numbs you, in effect. It does a lot of different things. And so I think one of the most obvious examples right now of grooming is the movie Cuties. The Netflix movie that just came out that has blatant pedophilia. It has little girls like doing unimaginable things, and they're like, what are they, like 12?
Yeah, they're 12. They're pre-adolescent. They're adolescent. There you go. That's totally messed that up, but they're adolescent. So
and it's just disgusting things, and there's a lawsuit in Texas right now on it. And so when we say every movie has a message or has an agenda or has something, this movie is blatant pedophilia. This movie is blatant, child pornography is essentially what it is. There are literally pornographic. The kids do pornographic.
It's mild. It's not just no. Actually,
No.
I've seen that there's some legit.
I've seen a lot of when this was like really exploding and all of the reviews were coming out, and I saw one that literally says that they go shirtless and some.
Yeah.
It's literally child pornography, and so this idea of grooming is that it normalizes things and it gets you to numb to it. It gets you so that it doesn't affect you anymore. That's what we mean by grooming. And so, a coincidence or not, it's very intriguing to me that this movie just happened to come out around the exact same time that California's passed their pedophilia bill that allows
it reduces the age, right?
It reduces the age
gap.
Yeah. If there's a consenting child and an adult within a 10-year age gap, it reduces, or it eliminates. It's not a crime anymore. It's not considered pedophilia. And so it's interesting to me that these two things came out at the same time, and it's kind of hard for me to think that was 100% a complete coincidence. But that's what we talk about when we talk about grooming. And so there's other instances of grooming when you look back at this is more prevalent in TV shows, but like the gay characters in TV shows. What happens is now they slowly start to introduce more gay characters, and they introduce it into a movie that you kind of like and that you're willing to look over it for. Next thing you know, they enter it into this movie and this movie and this movie, and next thing you know, every good movie that you've seen has something along the lines of like whether it's gay, pedophilia, sexual immorality, that kind of stuff. And every movie has it, and then next thing you know, you're just like, oh, well, it's in every movie, what are you going to do about it? And it's like, okay, well, where do we draw the line? Because the
line just keeps moving back,
yeah.
It's not just there. You just erase the line and then you move it back further. Like, you just keep getting closer and closer to the edge.
Well, and every time they get to the edge, they just push it a little bit more, then they scoot it back a little bit more. Then you're like, oh, well, now every movie does this. Well, now every movie does this. Okay, how far is too far, though? That's what we mean by grooming. It's not just this kind of stuff, but it's also violence, too, a lot of movies now are very violent. I remember going to see the newest Rambo come out,
Hmm.
and I went and watched it, and it was me, my dad, and my uncle, and we finished the movie, and I turn around, and there is no joke, an 8-year-old kid, at least 8. I mean, it could have been like, I don't remember if it was a boy or a girl.
He was a small child.
It was a small child that had no business being in that movie.
Yeah.
Old enough definitely to know what was happening, but young enough to that
It just wasn't appropriate, right?
Not at all. You know, there's people like getting their heads blown off in that movie. There's people going and
Getting impaled by spikes, right?
yeah. One guy falls in and gets spikes, and this kid's watching the movie, and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what are you exposing your children to? And so I do think that there is to a certain effect, a numbing involved in these kind of things, and I think we'll hit this more in video games, because video games is definitely the most the one that politicians and adults tend to blame like school shootings and violence on the most.
Yeah,
Would
we
you
can
agree
talk
with that?
about. Yeah, we can talk about that later, but
And
yeah,
we'll hit
that's
on-
what's
yeah.
coming up.
We'll hit on that more, but I definitely think it's very prevalent in movies. You know, movies I think are what everybody watches, and so just going into this numbing effect, I want to hit on the Oscars inclusion rule coming up in 2022. So to kind of further push this idea of hidden messages and agendas, a certain percentage of the cast, a certain percentage of the workers, the crew, backups, all that kind of stuff has to be a certain percentage minority. Whether it's a sexual minority, a religious minority, an ethnic minority, like any kind of minority. Basically anybody other than a white, straight male.
Who is Christian? Yeah.
Yeah, essentially. But literally, it's discriminatory based on race, gender, and ethnicity.
When
That-
they're trying to be inclusive with race, gender, and ethnicity. And
Exactly. And so you stopped hiring people based on who's most qualified, which is what me and Jarrett both believe in. We believe that the best qualified person, no matter race, gender, skin color, whatever, the best qualified person should get the job. And now you're taking that away, and you're now saying, okay, well, this person's white, and we'll say this person's black, this person's Mexican. Now, not the best qualified person's going to get the job. If there's too many white people, now the black guy automatically gets the job, or the Mexican automatically gets the job, or the Asian person automatically gets the job.
Mhm.
Automatically. Just because of the color of their skin or their race. Or a gay person gets a job. Or a woman automatically gets a job. That's not what civil rights was about, you know? What did Martin Luther King fight for? He fought for that his children would be judged on the content of the character, not the color of their skin.
Absolutely correct.
And
Yeah.
that not only applies to color of the skin, but it applies to religion. It applies to sex,
Mhm.
what gender you are. And so it's 100% discriminatory, and movies are just going to get worse. You think that they're not grooming you? Well, now they're just going to be throwing more stuff in your face. Now it's going to be like, oh, well, it's required that every movie has this percentage of gay characters in the story. It has to be in the story. It has to be the cast. It has to be within the movie and the people working on the movie. All of this. And so if you don't think that they are grooming you, or you don't think that it's a big deal, well, just prepare for it to get worse, because look at the cuties. You know, eventually what's going to happen is you're going to come out with some good movies that are going to have some sketchy characters. And you're just going to be like, oh, well, it was a good movie, so I can ignore that. The next thing you know, the next movie has it, and then the next movie has it, and the next thing you know, it's regular.
Or yeah, I can just see like a movie of this, you know, parent and like their kid, and there's another guy and like a really small child, and the mom or dad is like, oh yeah, he just really likes little kids or something like that, but it's okay, we don't want to bother him.
Yeah, it's not.
I feel like it's going to be, and you know, tell me I'm wrong, because that's exactly how that happens. Is like the child's like, why is she like 10 and then he's like 40? Like that's That's weird, and that's not his daughter.
That's how it's gonna
right?
start out. Yeah.
And so then the mom's like, well, it's just how it is. Like, he just likes little kids like that. So, we just kind of let him be. Like, I don't agree with it, but we just let it be. That's right there. What they're teaching you is to just let it be and let it go. And I guarantee you that's exactly what will happen.
Well, that's
it's going to be that, like, thin line, and then eventually they're just going to keep pushing it.
That's how it's going to start. It's going to appear as if, like, it could be a dad and his daughter, or it could be,
or it's like innocent. Yeah,
and it's kind of sketchy. They made a weird move that could send it one way over the other, and then next thing you know, it's going to be a neighbor, and it's going to be a 16-year-old wife and a middle-aged dude.
Yeah.
And you're not really going to know, but then someone's going to make a comment, and the next thing you know, it's going to show them kissing or something, and the next thing you know, the next movie they're going to be doing more. The next thing you know, it's going to be a main character or a side character, and then it just keeps moving, getting worse, and then it's normalized.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to avoid. And I think this starts to apply more into TV shows. And so, Jared, you love the Andy Griffith Show.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't? If you don't like the Andy Griffith Show, get out of here. Well, just leave this world.
The Andy Griffith Show is a perfect example of what TV used to be.
Yeah, if you're hating on the Andy Griffith Show, what's wrong with you? You're literally the worst human being ever. It is the most wholesome show that you could ever watch. Like, it's got great morals in there, great characters that are just fun to watch. It's entertaining too. It's not like boring, or everyone can watch these kinds of shows, and that's what it was. Like, shows back in the 60s and 50s shows and stuff like that, those were family shows, and you would watch those with your kids. That's what those were for, was to bring families together and to watch them and enjoy the same thing and get the same message, right? And so now there's not family shows anymore. There's always something.
There's
or if there are,
and there's kid shows, and there's rarely anything in between.
Yeah. I mean, just kind of coming back to, like, kind of where I was born, we had Toy Story, right, come out. It was a little bit before 2000, like 1999. But, or it could have even been further than that, the original one. That's a great movie. I love that movie. I know we're on TV shows, but I wanted to talk about Toy Story. But you don't see any movies like that anymore.
TV shows.
Or even TV shows like the Andy Griffith Show. You don't see those kinds of things where the entire family can enjoy that same content but be entertained at the same time.
Yeah, there used to be a time in television when a mother and a father, if the characters were ever in their room, they would never be shown in the same bed, and there would actually be two different beds. I caught that watching a show one time. I don't even know what it was. And they're in the parents' room, and there's a bed on one side of the room, and there's another bed on the other side of the room. And I was like, what the heck? And turns out it was considered too vulgar to have a man and a woman and one bed in the room. Even if they weren't even in it, it was considered vulgar. And, like, that's obviously on its own kind of extreme. But that's how far we've come. We've come from not even associating anything with any kind of sexual immorality, even though that's not even considered sexual immorality, but that's how far we've come. And then, next thing you know, the parents are in the same bed, and which isn't a big deal. But then you get, a boyfriend or girlfriend in the same bed, and they're living together, and then this and that. And you just see a rapid decline. And you go from shows that never had parents in the same bed to now you have a TV show called Lucifer that's literally about Satan. Like, how much more evil can it get when you're making a show about Satan? And going into kids shows, there's a Nickelodeon show called The Loud House that introduces, the premise of the show is, I think it's one boy with a bunch of sisters, and I forget, it's a lot. It's like 8 or 9 sisters, I think, is what it is. And one of the little girls, who is supposed to be like 10 or 12, ends up like kissing a girl or something, or goes on a date with a girl. And it's like, that's what your children are exposed to now. That's what happens in TV shows. It's indoctrination of the youth, and they're trying to make it normalize. It goes back to that grooming. It's It's when kids see it, you know, kids like this show, you know, maybe their favorite character is, they're watching a show and their favorite character is gay. Well, next thing you know, character, okay, well, what's wrong with that? Or, you know, their favorite character might have a really inappropriately old or young significant other. You know, maybe it's a teenager dating a 40-year-old, and next thing you know, that's their favorite character. Like, oh, well, it can't be that bad. No, that's what you're being exposed to, and that's how far we've come. We've gone to shows like the Andy Griffith Show, to these Loud House shows, you know, and it used to be that when you had TV shows or movies like Disney, it used to be a battle between good and evil, and Jared touched on witchcraft a little while ago, and I don't want to bash on Harry Potter or anything, but Harry Potter does introduce people to witchcraft if you're not careful. There's been an increase in witchcraft since Harry Potter, and I love Harry Potter. Like, don't get me wrong, but it can be dangerous for some people. It gets people interested in something that they normally wouldn't be interested in. In the 80s, when there was the big surge of increase in the Church of Satan,
Yeah.
that was the exact same time when movies like Friday the 13th came out, when Halloween came out. You think that's a coincidence? Do you think that people start watching these satanic type movies? And not that all of them are satanic, but
Even though they're corny, but
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
super corny. But
But-
yes, I
they're
see
dark.
that. Of course.
And they're spiritual, whether it's ghosts or they're actually demons, and it gets people interested in this kind of stuff, and it gets people interested into the occult. And, you know, it used to be in movies that it used to be the battle between good and evil, and it used to be like in Disney movies where it used to be like Snow White and Sleeping Beauty and stuff. It used to be the good was fighting the bad. You know, if there was witchcraft, witches, dragons, that kind of stuff, the good was always fighting to defeat them, to get rid of them, to push it back.
Can I just say, why is there always a witch in like most Disney movies? Like,
well, a lot of the
there's-
original Disney movies are based off of fairy tales.
well, yeah, okay, but just think about it for a second. So you said Snow White, right?
Mhm.
There's a witch, everything. You have Sleeping Beauty. You have Maleficent, who was
A witch,
a witch.
essentially. I mean, just because it doesn't say that they're a witch,
Right,
air
but
quotes, doesn't mean
they
they're not.
they messed with like dark power. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Is they use that. You have the Little Mermaid. You have like Ursula. It's right there.
Yeah, even that is a type of indoctrination right there. It's getting you used to black magic, but like I said, the difference
But it
used
was
to be
good and
good
evil. They're
versus
bad
evil.
people.
the bad used to be the ones doing witchcraft. You don't do the witchcraft because Maleficent did witchcraft.
Right,
You know,
yeah.
that's not how it works. You wanted to be like CB, you want to be the good person.
But that's kind of where it starts, though. That's where it
true.
starts.
And, you know, you can make an argument, definitely, that that's not even good. But now you've gone so far, there's a TV show that literally has a girl who summons a demon, and they're the good people, and they fight bad demons.
Yeah.
I kid you not. I think it's a Nickelodeon show, too. It's a little girl, and she summons a good demon, air quote, good demon, because there's no such thing as a good demon. And she literally goes and fights bad demons. That's where you've gone. Now you've gone from this witchcraft or this satanic stuff, this like spiritual warfare, and you've gone from now they are the good isn't fighting them. Now the demons are the good guys. That it's good versus bad, but there's no such thing as a good demon.
No, yeah.
It's just indoctrination. It's the grooming. It's getting used to witchcraft. And, you know, like I said with Harry Potter is not inherently bad, but it does expose you to things that aren't good. Witchcraft is not good, even though Harry Potter's not, you know, like satanic witchcraft. It's more in the realm of like mythology than it is like witchcraft. Even which mythology has that kind of element of cultic practices and stuff, but it's not like, you know, I'm gonna go make blood sacrifices.
Yeah, it's so one thing I also want to talk about, like, have you heard of like people that talk about like friendly spirits
Yeah.
and things like that? Okay, so
Well,
it's
that's basically what that
yeah. So
TV show.
it's one thing to basically, a lot of people, when they say friendly spirit, they'll say that they talk to their friendly spirit, or they dream about their friendly spirit, or whatever, right? I'm not saying they're necessarily involved in doing certain things, but they're like being exposed to something that's like, I don't know. It's definitely a very touchy subject, and it's one thing, I guess, feeling protected, right? Because we as children of Christ were, protected by God, and there's a spirit world out there. There's demons and there's angels, and they're all over the place. They're, I don't know, sitting right next to you in your room while you're listening. Or not sitting next to you, but they're there. People are there. There's angels and demons. I don't mean to scare you, but there are. So when people are like, oh, I have a friendly spirit that I just talk with, or I don't know, I've known people where they say, oh yeah, I just command like the my friend or whatever to like shut off a flashlight or whatever, like do those certain weird.
They do certain rituals. There's actually a book that came out on Amazon of how to summon demons for specific tasks. I kid you not.
Yeah.
It was an Amazon
math
bestseller.
Homework.
It was how to answer math. Yeah.
Don't want to make. Not gonna lie, sounds very tempting. I would love some help on math homework.
No, but it's literally it gives you ways to summon one for math homework to help you clean your room. And I'm not even kidding. This is a real book. You guys search on Amazon. I forget what it's called. It's literally something like demon summoning to help you out. Like it's something like so obvious. And there's a warning on the book that says like danger.
Be careful.
Yeah, and it's just like be careful. Like not all of these are good demons. There's no such thing as a good demon.
So I actually really want to do a episode on these kinds of on this a little bit more on witchcraft and those kinds of things. We'll have to move on because I don't want to get into it. There's a deep rabbit hole that just keeps going and going because there's so much. So we'll leave it out there at that. We're definitely going to do one. I would love to do one, but we're going to move on from there.
I think
because we don't got time.
Yeah, just be aware that's
what those are the things.
Just
again, it leads to one thing to another. They're selling books. You can get it anywhere.
A children's book. It's literally.
They don't ask for your age.
Yeah.
So
next topic we have is music.
Oh wow.
Before we start on music, I just want to make the statement. What is music? Music is a form of worship.
It's created for worship, yeah.
That is exactly what music is. Music is created, from a biblical perspective, music is created to worship God. That's how we explain music. One of the things I've heard an interesting argument, not to get too far away from the subject, but an argument against atheism. If anyone's an atheist out there listening, how do you explain music? How do you explain the way music makes you feel? How do you explain the way music changes your emotions? Because if we're just chemicals bouncing around, then it shouldn't do anything. But with the biblical perspective, with the biblical view, we view we view music as a form of worship. We view music as a way that changes our emotions. And so we're going to get into how what you're listening to affects the way you feel, affects the way you treat others, it affects your emotions, and it affects your worship. Because what you're listening to is what you're worshiping.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Music is definitely a form of worship. It's art. It's how you express yourself, right? But you're getting that inspiration from somewhere or from something.
Or someone.
Right, someone.
Or actions.
Right.
Yeah.
There's just, or events in your life. So you're getting it always from someone or something. And you're riding off of emotion, whether it's happiness, it's sadness, it's anger, frustration, those kinds of things. That's what you're riding based off of. And so, coming from like a Christian perspective, worship music is obviously for God. Like that's why that's created for, is to worship God. And you also have other forms of music that aren't that are the complete opposite. And not to completely just bag on or bash those other forms of music, because I think those different kinds of music, while it may not be necessarily worshiping God directly, I think even if you're a Christian but you're not like, worshiping Jesus necessarily in all your songs, but you're a Christian and you can see God in their work and stuff like that, I really respect those kinds of things. But even like I said, for art, it's talent, and I really like seeing what people have to put out there, because I mean, if I made something, I would want other people to see it or listen to it.
Yeah, and real quick, we're not saying that like if you don't listen to Christian music, then like any other music's bad, or you're a bad
evil person. Yeah,
I don't listen to that much Christian music. I'm not a big fan of it.
Yeah,
a lot of the Christian music today, I don't like. I don't feel like it actually worships God. Another topic. I don't feel like Christian music is what is the worship of God that it's supposed to be, and it doesn't appeal to emotion. I don't feel like that. I listen to a lot of 90s and grunge, alternative.
Yeah.
That's what I like. That's what makes me feel best. Like that's what I like, and you got to be aware of what you're listening to, as the point that we're making, because if you're worshiping sex in your music, if you're worshiping drugs in your music, if you're worshiping this and that, if you're worshiping people, you have to be careful for what you're listening to. And I'm sure you're gonna get to this point, but rap is really bad at this. Rap and hip hop.
Yeah, rap really has a huge platform for not only artists and people for influence, but just it's everywhere. You hear it everywhere. You hear hip hop songs or whatever in the store. You hear them on the radio, just everywhere. And it's not that I want to say rap or hip hop. We've already established that we're not saying it's evil, and these
rap and hip hop in itself is not inherently evil.
No,
but you can turn it into something like
because if you go back, you have to look at the history of some of these things. Rap and hip hop is made because people just want to have fun. They want to just show their talent. I mean, rap was just kind of, you made an awesome beat or whatever, and you would rap to it. You would do, some, you'd put some deep lyrical thought in your songs. And, that was where people's talents were shown, is how they made music and their sound and things like that. And so that's kind of how that started, at least rap or hip hop, because they're very kind of, close together in today's.
They're very interchangeable.
Yeah, they're very close. And because a lot of rappers or, hip hop artists, they kind of go into each of those different like genres, and they mix and do those things, or they collaborate with people. So, not to put rap and hip hop in the same exact genre, but it's very, very close and like parallel. You can compare them very easily. But yeah, that's how that started. And I honestly like that. I like to make music just to have fun and those kinds of things, because that's what I enjoy doing. So I respect people that enjoy making their music and expressing how they feel. However, when you're putting negative influences in there, vulgar influences, language is a huge thing today. Okay? Yes, of course, we had it in the 90s. We had it in 90s rap.
There are plenty of very bad 90s
there's definitely
songs.
Rap songs that were very suggestive back in the day. And but now it is just grossly it's there.
It's
the
most,
every other verse or line
the most
where there's something,
stuff is the dirty
and
stuff.
It's the most popular things that are being put out there, where it has the worst language, the worst innuendos. It's just everything. It's so bad.
They're not even innuendos. They just come out and straight say it.
Yeah, but they give you like a sign. Like if you're old enough, you know.
Yeah.
You know what they're talking about. And so that's what I have a big problem with, is it started from just having fun and making great music and just enjoying yourself, but now it's every other verse. It's something that has to do with drugs or alcohol or, I don't know.
Very vulgar terms for sex.
Yeah,
Like,
you have you're messing with groupies or whatever. Just those kinds of things. It's just, why does that have to be in there? And, I listen, some of my favorite artists use a lot of language, but I focus more on the content of what they're actually saying, right, in their songs. I don't listen to, I do listen to it because I enjoy the beat, but I enjoy it because I like what they're saying, and I think it has a positive message to it, right? But a lot of these people, they don't have a positive message to it.
Well, their positive message is getting high.
Yeah, or it's, sleeping with 3 people
At the same time.
at the same, yeah. But
Literally.
it doesn't have to be that way, but that's how they do it, and that's how they make money. So that's just my big issue on what music is today, is they're putting things in there more and more frequently and more consistently than ever.
Well, and one of the things too is how mainstream this genre has gotten, because in the 90s it was big, but now it is impossible to hear.
Oh, it's number 1.
No,
easily.
It's not even
It's
close.
just,
It's almost impossible for anyone to listen to any other genre. If you're a guy, no joke, if you're a guy, I don't think I've ever met a guy that doesn't listen to either modern music, because a lot of guys still listen to 90s alternative and grunge like I do. It's literally any modern music that people listen to right now is rap and hip hop or country. I don't think I've heard anyone say anything else. No one likes anything else. It's so vulgar. It's so terrible. It's so mainstream. And that's what we're getting onto is the genre itself is not inherently bad.
right.
But what the artists have made it into, and what culture has made it into, and what culture listens to it for, it's horrible. And it's so popular, but you're getting little kids that are listening to it now. You're getting little kids that are affected by it. You're getting little kids that are hearing these vulgar terms. You're hearing them talk about sex, drugs, all that stuff. And now alcohol. The list goes on in rap. And now these kids who idolize these rappers, it's their favorite rappers, they're going to think, oh, well, what's wrong with that? So-and-so does it. What's wrong with that? So-and-so does it. Well, they said this. Why can't I do that? And
why are all these rappers that we've all love and enjoy, they overdose on drugs, or they do something that gets them in prison, or they get killed?
Yeah. Well, every genre has its negative aspects. Every genre has their
but
people in it.
You see more and more of these artists that rap about drugs or alcohol or, shooting people or robbing people or, shooting the police. What does that have to do with, what is that doing for your song?
Well, going back to
I understand now, and I understand, what you're thinking, kind of expressing your thoughts, right? But you're doing it, in a very negative way, and it's every song, right?
Yeah, but going back to worship, by what they're singing, that's what they're worshiping. They're worshiping these horrible things. One of the observations that I've made that I think is really important here is that, my closest friends that I hang out with, Jared listens to rap a little bit, but not a lot, not as much.
I listen to it a lot.
not the vulgar things, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
As far as artists go, you don't listen to the bad stuff.
No.
A lot of my closest friends listen to a lot of the same music I do, and basically all my friends that have the same shared values as me, they listen to the same music. What I found out at school, or even at church and that kind of thing, is the worst kids listen to the worst music. The worst kids listen to the worst lyrics. They listen to the most vulgar lyrics. The kids that are actually the drug addicts at school, or the druggies, the they've slept with the most people, the most biggest partiers. They listen to the worst music. And I don't have any evidence to back this up, but it's an observation that I've made.
Yeah.
In my own life, the people that...
Well, there you go. That's you technically have that evidence. You haven't firsthand experienced that thing, but you've noticed and you've witnessed those kinds of things.
It fails almost never. And, there's always exceptions. There are kids that listen to bad music that are good kids.
Yeah.
But what I found is the majority of kids that don't listen to the mainstream music, that like what they like, that kind of go against the flow, they don't fall into that kind of stuff, they are the best kids as far as, they share my beliefs. They're good people. They share, like, they're most like me. And I think that's incredibly interesting, is because it just shows you, like, what people, how music affects people. When people are listening to their music and it's allowing it to change their emotions, they're going to start thinking like the way that person is singing or rapping in this case. And I think that's what we're talking about here. That's the danger. Back in the 40s and 50s, literally every song was a clean song. Like, there's no, even like what a scandalous song back then. It was nothing to what it is now. You start seeing this decrease.
Mm-hmm.
And you start seeing it get a little dirtier and a little dirtier and a little dirtier, and you get into these nasty songs, and next thing you know, it gets mainstream like it is now, and almost everybody is smoking weed at school. Almost everybody's vaping at school. And not that vaping necessarily is inherently wrong, but there are
it's
lots
not a good
of problems
decision.
with it. It's not smart, And I don't want to get into vaping. I don't vape, and I think it's incredibly stupid, and I think it's incredibly useless.
I think that's another topic, bro.
That's another topic.
Got another one.
But it's these worst kids, but it's not just vaping I'm talking about. It's the most of the kids that listen to the worst music, they're vaping THC. They're smoking, they're partying like hard, if you know what I mean. And so these worst kids listen to the worst music, and that's the biggest observation that I make. And you see, as the music declines, the culture's been declining. And whether you think that the music is declined because of the culture is declined because of the music, I think that's up to you. But I see strong correlations with what the music does, the culture does.
Because it's an influence, right? Obviously, what we see all the time or we hear all the time, we're influenced by. There's different degrees of influence, obviously, right? Just listening to a song once, like I said, like way back when we started this episode, when I was talking about movies, you remember certain things, certain scenes, right? You remember what is being talked about. And so same thing applies to music, is you remember, a certain verse that someone said, right? And you're influenced by that. Whether or not you take action on that influence, it's whatever. Like I said, there's different degrees to that.
But it does.
But when you're listening to it all the time,
and just because you don't necessarily take action on it doesn't mean it doesn't change the way that you think,
right?
Or change the way that you see the world, or change the way that you judge people or judge this and that. Just because you say, like, I listen to this bad music, but I still go to church and I love Jesus, but you're, half of morality is your thoughts. It's not just what you actually do. It's what you're thinking. It's your thought process. It's this and that. There's lots more decisions when it goes into morality than just if you do the right decision or the bad decision.
Yeah, I dare you to pull the church bumping Migos. All right, I dare you to just blast that in the church parking lot.
Well, and it really shows like what your character is too. I believe. When someone's coming in and listening to a dirty song or a bad or vulgar song, how does that affect how you think about that person? Whether that's right or wrong, not just me, but anyone, people think like that. And, like I said, the worst kids listen to the worst music. You have anything else you want to talk about on that?
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about just the certain, I don't want to like completely just point certain artists out, But again, these artists have such a huge influence. And I'm not just saying with, you know, drugs or alcohol, but also, well, I guess it kind of has to do with morals too there, right? Morals and ethics. But seriously, they have a huge influence on those kinds of things, right? How you think, what you do, what you say. And I don't know, even when they're off the mic, they're acting cuckoo. They're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. They're insane.
How'd I know that was coming?
Yeah, well, hey, it was lined up for me. And so, seriously, these people have such a huge platform that not only are they influencing people, you know, in their music, but they're influencing them like by what they say just online or on Twitter or Instagram. Or it doesn't even have to be these music artists. It could be movie stars. I mean, I'm actually point at Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I call him Dwayne the Stone Johnson now, because he's backing up.
He endorsed
Joe Biden,
Biden
and I can't call him Dwayne The Rock Johnson anymore. He is now a stone to me that I have cast.
Don't be dumb as The Rock.
Yeah. Yeah, don't be dumb as a rock, please. You know, you may be big and strong, but if you're dumb, who cares?
Yep.
But yeah, it's just these movie stars and these celebrities. Gosh, I hate some of these celebrities. But yeah, that's just the kind of thing is when people are in this entertainment industry, it's a lot of these people or a lot of people with big names, they have a big influence on what they say, so you should be careful.
Well, they have a big influence, and they don't always use it in the best ways. And I think that's really important, too. When you have this kind of platform, you should be using it for positive things. You know, if you're a Christian, you should definitely be sharing it like God and Jesus and stuff. But even if you're not a Christian and you're just whatever you believe, you should be telling people. People listen to what you say. People take it to heart. So you shouldn't be spreading negative, bad, vulgar things. You should try and be the best person you can be. And I think that's where essentially it kind of ends up. This whole thing is that you need to be the best person you can be, and you need to help other people to be that. And so the last point that we want to talk about is video games. And one of the reasons we want to talk about this is because going into not so much the grooming but the violence aspect of it. It's grooming to an extent, but
it's not like pedophilia. Well, maybe you might eventually get them in video games too, so who knows.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the LGBTQ stuff coming in video games, and just like subtle things like it's not necessarily
like Last of Us. Have you ever seen that game?
Well, I'm not.
It's actually a really dope game, but
I'm not talking about like free roam games, and I don't want to like get too specific because not everyone's like plays video games, so not everyone's gonna know what we're talking about right here.
Well, they can just look it up.
But like I'm not talking about free roam games where like you can literally do anything like GTA. Yeah, where you can go and do whatever you want, whoever you want, you know, steal cars, do things, go and hire a stripper. Like literally, that's something you can
rob
do
a convenience store.
Yeah,
that's always fun.
Yeah, so I'm not talking about that, like, you know, but I'm talking about like characters in story games that are meant to have a story, and you know they put the gay character in there, and they make it really subtle, and you like might not notice, and then there's a comment where you're like, oh yeah, and it goes back to that indoctrination. But with video games, I think the main point I want to hit with video games is how specifically Trump and a lot of parents now.
Karens. No, I'm joking. Not just Karens.
But parents and I don't know, probably even like high level psychiatric stuff has
politicians.
Yeah,
whatever.
That they try and blame all these school shootings on violent video games, and that's what I think we want to hit on most here is the violence. And I will admit, you know, video games have gotten more violent and
grotesque
as they've gotten as society's gone down, and I'll admit that. But I don't think it's a fair comparison to say that because of video games, you have more school shooters.
Yeah, like we said, we just listed all the other forms of entertainment, especially music. You don't think music has a big influence on
I personally
people
believe,
robbing and shooting up schools?
I personally believe music is the biggest factor because, like I said, the worst people listen to the worst music. And I know several kids that are not good kids, that are these bad kids that listen to the worst music type kids that don't even play video games. And so, how do you argue that? And now,
Because they're too busy doing other things. They don't got time for video games.
That's true. But then I know a lot of them that still do play video games.
Yeah.
But a lot of and I don't want to completely say either that like video games have no influence on like these school shootings and stuff and like mental health cases and sociopathic tendencies and stuff. But I don't think that they have nearly the influence that most people say, just based on personal experience, from someone who plays a good amount of video games. And, I play video games that would be considered more violent. I don't play the most violent, most vulgar video games, but I play like shooting games and that kind of stuff, like Call of Duty. I personally don't feel an effect on that. I've never really heard anybody that's like, oh yeah, I play a lot of video games, I'm gonna go shoot up a school. Like I obviously no one's gonna come out and say that, but I've never gotten that impression even from anybody. Now, I'm not saying that maybe someone who has sociopathic tendencies might not get pleasure from doing that kind of stuff, or maybe even like slightly alters the state. But I'm not gonna say someone who never would have ever shot up a school suddenly starts playing video games and now they're a school shooter. I don't think like that's a lot of the arguments that even Trump said that I disagree with. I don't personally believe that video games have that big of an influence on people. And like I said, I personally believe music has a much bigger influence. Now, with that said, I do think that there's some effect. And one of the reasons I say this is because, kind of going back to movies, I was watching the movie Fury. Jared, have you seen that?
I haven't seen Fury, no.
So it was
Wanted to.
It was me, my dad, and my girlfriend watching Fury. And if you don't know what Fury is basically a World War II movie, and it's on the more violent side. It's pretty realistic. It's very graphic. It stays true to what war really is, And I do think that violence is acceptable in those kinds of cases, or when it's true story and like what actually happens to get points across. I do think that there are time and place for violence and other things in movies, but our main argument here is that that it's in every movie, that it's in movies that it shouldn't be, it's in kids' movies. But going back to my story, well, there's a part in the movie that there's a tank going by, and the movie is based on this one tank. And the tank goes by, and they're going into a town that they just took over, and there's a dead German on the ground, and they run him over. And it's a pretty gross scene. And I'm watching it, my girlfriend's watching it just straight face. It didn't really affect us. Like, I was like, oh, yeah, whatever. And my dad, it like starts to like scream, so and is grossed out. And even after
exposing your dad like that? No.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, even like there's been other movies that like same kind of thing, and I'm like, well, I don't know, it didn't affect me, it didn't affect my girlfriend, like it's not a big deal. Like I didn't think anything of that much. Like, it's a war movie, like I'm expecting that. But my dad's like, see, that's the difference between our generation, is you've been so exposed to violence that doesn't bug you. I agree and I disagree at the same time. I do agree that, yeah, we've been exposed, and I'm sure that is part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also watching a war movie, and I'm expecting this kind of stuff to happen in the first place. And just because I can watch it, some people too, like, some people can watch it, some people can't. And so I think that's also a difference in the person. That helps.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure. I remember watching Hacksaw Ridge, one of my favorite movies, and I love watching that. It gives you, I don't know, it's awesome. It gives you like chills because it's just so
realistic.
Yeah, it's so emotionally impactful that it's just, I don't know how to really explain it.
And-
It's hard to really comprehend and be
that-
like, wow, that's
Those are one of the
insane.
movies like that, and like Saving Private Ryan. Like that happened.
Yeah.
That's when a movie should have violence. That's when that movie is not grooming violence as far as like unnecessary violence. This is what happened, and so you
Yeah.
better be thankful for what these men did.
Mm-hmm.
Like war movies, especially.
I enjoyed those a lot.
Like those should be not as violent as possible, but as realistic as they can be. Because for me personally, it gives me a greater appreciation for what those men fought and what they did.
Right.
Keep going.
But yeah, I just in Hacksaw Ridge, what is it that the very beginning when they're climbing up the cliff to up the ropes, and the battleship, they just shoot all their artillery up there on the hill, and was it the very beginning? No, I think it was like later. But anyway, there's one of the scenes where they're climbing back up, and they shoot the artillery, and they're climbing up, and there's blood like literally dripping down because like it blew up all the Japanese up there on that hill. Like it just literally just destroyed them, and blood was like dripping down. But there's also like guts and all that thing and all those kinds of things. But I wasn't really affected by it. I wasn't like grossed out as much. And obviously there is some where you're like, wow, that's crazy. But I was like, ugh, that's disgusting. Like, oh, I can't watch it, right? That kind of thing. Because I watched it in a movie theater, and there was a lot of like older parents that are like, oh, that's nasty. And my friend and I, that were watching it, we play, Call of Duty and those kinds of things. So we weren't affected by that. So that's kind of, I can definitely relate to you there. Is, I think definitely for sure we're more exposed to violence, especially through video games and other forms of entertainment today.
Yeah, but with that said, I think what people our age now have learned is that I think we're able to separate ourselves better than maybe our parents or grandparents would have been able to do because of video games. I think at least me personally, I know this, that if I'm playing Call of Duty or any time of game like that, I'm able to separate myself. Like, this isn't real. When I see it, I don't see it as I'm killing a person. I see it as like I'm playing a sport.
I'm just trying to finish my objective, man. Gosh.
Yeah. It's not different than like playing paintball or playing BB guns. How is it different? Like, obviously the guy dies, but then he respawns and you're new again. Like, it's
You're
different.
made new.
It's different for me. Like, I can separate myself. I can know this is a video game. It's not real. It's not a big deal. Now, that said, there are video games that you
should be careful.
You should
mindful.
be very careful about. Yeah, because there's some games that you probably don't want to be able to separate yourself from. There's some games that are so bad and so vulgar and so immoral that if you're able to separate yourself from that type of game, then there might be a bigger problem. Like, that's when you get into like the sociopathic stuff. You're like, okay, that might have some kind of influence on him. That might be a line. There's not a lot of those games, but there are a couple. But one of the things even I've kind of found with games, not like that, but like the open world games or the games that are harder to separate myself from or might feel more realistic, like Fallout, is that even I tend to do, like, if I'm playing as myself as a character and I'm not just like made a guy just to like go and be a jerk to everybody, because sometimes it's fun to go and make a game and be someone that you would never be in real life to characters. But if I'm being like myself and I'm trying to like win the game and play the game right, then like if there's an objective and I'm gonna do it like how I would do it in real life. And so there's like scenarios, if you're like talking to a person, you can literally go tell them to shut up. And like, I'm not gonna do that because like I wouldn't do that with my character. Now I might create a character just to be a jerk because it's funny, but in games where I can't separate myself, I try and play it how I would play it, like be in real life.
Right. I fully agree with what you're saying there, Christians. Yeah, I also kind of separate myself there in those situations in those video games. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
So do we have anything else we want to add?
No, sounds about it. We got some topics that looks like we're going to talk about. I would really like to talk about those.
yeah, so that wraps it up. We hope you guys enjoyed listening. This was it wasn't a very political episode, which isn't a bad thing, I don't think. But I hope it brings to light, makes you more aware of what you are digesting or what you're watching, what you're, what's going into your heart or what you're watching when this stuff
Blood goes into my heart.
You're funny. Because, let me clarify that, Jaron. When you're listening to this stuff or when you're watching this stuff, it really does affect your heart. Like we said with music, it's a form of worship. Worship affects your heart, right? So we just want you to be mindful and aware of what you're watching and listening to and spending your time doing. Because, there's some stuff that you should just never be a part of. And that's what we're trying to make you aware of. Is that, A, don't associate yourself with these bad things. And B, don't compromise. That's I think is the biggest one, is that don't say, oh, well, I don't agree with it, but like, oh, well, it's in every movie now. Or it's not a big deal, or like there's worse things that could be in it. No.
I don't want to make a scene. It's
Yeah,
like, you have your right to your opinion. You can say what you want to say.
Don't compromise, because that's how you make things worse. And so with that said, thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you guys. We appreciate everything you guys do for us. We appreciate you guys listening. We hope you enjoy. Please support us. Please follow us on social media. Please like, subscribe to our videos. We'll have it up on YouTube. We have it up literally wherever you get your local podcasts. We have multiple platforms. You can always go on to Anchor and search it too online. We hope you guys can support us. We'd really appreciate that. That's what keeps it going. Like we said, like we've been saying, your guys' donations and support, that's how we've been able to get this better equipment. That's how we've been able to to thrive more.
Yeah, DM us, especially for this episode. Tell us what kind of music you like to listen to, what artists you generally listen to. Just kind of connect with us a little bit, because we like talking to our audience and those kinds of things, and we feel like it's just a better connection overall, just better experience. So if you'd like to DM us about what you listen to, or even topics that you want us to discuss in the future, feel free to do that.
Yeah, for sure, message us on topics, because we want to make sure that we're talking about things that you guys are interested in, and not just that we think you're interested in, but we want to know. We want you guys to be active. We want you guys to tell us, hey, this is what we thought. Hey, this is we agree with you. We disagree with you. We didn't like this point. We did like this point. Maybe you should do this next time. Maybe you should do that. Whatever we can do to make this better, that's our goal. We want you guys to enjoy. We want you guys to love to listen and be like, oh, nice, it's Friday, new episode's coming out. We want to have quality conversations, and we want you guys to think. We want you to be like, what kind of music am I listening to? Or what kind of movies am I watching? Do I compromise? That's our goal. Our goal is to get you to think and become a better person, and to hopefully you guys get to know Jesus and
make you fishers of men and women.
Exactly.
Had to say it, bro.
I know. Well, we hope you guys enjoyed. We're going to wrap it up now. We'll see you guys later.
All right. See ya.
Until next time.